My name is Tracy Sewell. I'm 34 years old, a single mother, and for most of my life, I believed that if I stayed calm, stayed generous, and stayed quiet, things would eventually even out. Last Christmas morning, my daughter Zoe woke up buzzing with energy, bouncing across the living room like the air itself was charged. She was 9, old enough to pretend she didn't believe in magic anymore, young enough to still hope it might surprise her. The Christmas tree lights were still blinking when she tore into the last present. I'd wrapped it in 3 layers of Frozen-themed paper, on purpose. I wanted the moment to last. When she finally pulled it open and saw the brand new iPhone, she froze. Her smile didn't spread right away. Instead, her eyes widened, and she looked up at me like she needed confirmation. "Mom, is this real?" Every overtime shift, every late night, every skipped break at work, worth it. I'd set the phone up myself the night before. Games installed, contacts synced, passcode chosen. I was careful. Or at least, I thought I had been. Zoe pressed the power button. The screen lit up. Then her smile faltered. "Mama, who's that?" I leaned in, already uneasy. The lock screen wasn't the wallpaper I'd chosen. It was a photo of my older sister Claire, her husband Greg, their 2 kids, Lucy and Evan, and Zoe, all standing together at a backyard barbecue from a few summers ago. I hadn't sent that photo. I didn't even remember saving it. Zoe just thought it was strange. She shrugged, confused but unbothered. I wasn't. I took the phone from her hands and started checking everything. Photos, messages, contacts. Nothing. The phone was empty. Except for one thing. A single calendar entry. 4 p.m. Christmas dinner at Claire's. The Apple ID wasn't mine. It didn't belong to anyone I recognized. It had been logged into just a few days earlier, and the only device connected to it was this phone. I felt a cold pressure settle in my chest. I'd bought the phone sealed. I still had the receipt. I'd checked twice to make sure it was brand new. For a moment, I told myself I'd made a mistake, that maybe I'd mixed something up during setup, that this was just one of those technical glitches that makes no sense until it suddenly does. Then, at 12:10 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Hey, Tracy. Quick change of plans. Just keeping it small this year. Claire's hosting for her in-laws. Let's do something next week, maybe. Love you." The message was calm, casual, as if nothing had been planned, as if we weren't already dressed, as if the pie Zoe and I had baked together the night before wasn't cooling on the counter. I read the message 3 times before I said anything. Zoe didn't ask questions. She just sat at the kitchen table, holding the phone, swiping through empty screens like she expected something to appear that would explain it all. I told her we'd figure something out. Maybe see a movie. Maybe do something fun. I didn't tell her what was really happening. At 4:03 p.m., I opened my phone again, because I'd forgotten to turn off family sharing. Zoe's phone still showed up under my account. I checked the location. It pinged immediately, right in front of me. Claire's house. The same house she supposedly wasn't hosting anything at. I didn't go right away. I waited 2 hours. I cleaned up the wrapping paper. I poured a glass of wine and didn't drink it. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, trying to slow my thoughts. Then I packed the pie into a carrier, told Zoe to grab her jacket, and drove. Claire's car was in the driveway. So were my parents. The porch light was on. Through the front window, I could see Christmas lights wrapped around the banister and someone, maybe Lucy, running past in a sparkly red dress. When Claire opened the door and saw me standing there with Zoe and the pie, she froze. I didn't say a word. I just held up the iPhone. Greg stormed over before I could step inside. His voice shot up instantly, sharp and defensive. My dad appeared a few seconds later, already trying to calm things down. My mom stood behind them, arms crossed, silent. No one denied it. They didn't even try. Claire wouldn't look me in the eye. They knew I was going to figure it out. They just didn't think I'd show up. And they definitely didn't think I'd take it as far as I was about to. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push past them. I just stood there at the threshold, phone in one hand, pie in the other, and watched the panic ripple through my family. Greg was the first to explode. He marched toward me like I'd kicked the door in, accusing me of ruining their Christmas, telling me I was out of line. My dad tried to pull him back. My mom shook her head slowly like she wished I wasn't there at all. I asked one question. Not to Greg. Not even to Claire. I asked my father. Where did the phone come from? He stammered, looked at Claire, then at my mom. No one answered. That silence told me everything. I asked again, quieter this time. Whose idea was it to give my daughter a used phone and pretend it was new, with a calendar invite to a dinner she wasn't even supposed to know about? Still nothing. Zoe was holding the pie the entire time. She hadn't said a word. She just stared at Greg, wide-eyed, trying to understand who he had suddenly become. I knelt down and told her gently to go back to the car and wait. She did, without a single question. As soon as the door closed behind her, I told them I'd be going to Apple the next day, that I'd report the device and trace the Apple ID. That's when the chaos started. Greg shouted. My dad tried to intervene. My mom stayed silent. Claire finally spoke and said it was just a mistake, that I was overreacting. She even suggested maybe Zoe misunderstood. I didn't respond. I turned around and left. Instead of going home, I drove Zoe to a 24-hour diner. She ordered pancakes and chocolate milk. She laughed when the whipped cream came shaped like a snowman. I smiled back, but my mind was already moving. Something had shifted, and I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. 3 days later, I found out what had really set everything in motion. My cousin Jenny called me late in the afternoon, her voice careful in that way people use when they know they're about to say something that can't be taken back. Tracy, she said, did you know Claire flipped out after she saw Zoe in the newspaper? I didn't answer right away. I already felt it clicking into place. Zoe had won a regional science award a few weeks earlier. Her school had even received a small grant because of it. There'd been a photo, Zoe smiling proudly in front of her project. I hadn't shared it with the family. I knew better. But Jenny had commented on the post on Facebook, tagging both of us. That was all it took. Jenny told me that the night my parents had everyone over, the same night they decided to keep things small, Claire had gone off. She'd ranted about how I was pushing Zoe too hard, how it wasn't healthy, how kids should just be kids. Then came the line that explained everything. Claire said she didn't want her kids feeling less than on Christmas. She didn't want Zoe being the center of attention again. That word sat heavy in my chest. According to Jenny, Claire had told my parents she wanted a quiet Christmas. Just her, Greg, and his family. No big gathering, no comparisons. My parents agreed. Just like that, Zoe and I were cut out of Christmas without a single conversation. I sat with that truth for an entire day. I replayed every moment in my head, the fake calm in my mother's text, the Apple ID, the calendar invite, the way no one had denied it at the door. Then I opened my banking app. For the last 12 months, I'd been quietly covering Claire's rent. $3,200 a month. It had started after Greg got laid off. They were desperate to stay in their neighborhood because of the kids' school. Claire had cried on the phone and promised it would only be for a few months. I never told anyone. I didn't want leverage. I didn't want gratitude. I just wanted my niece and nephew to be stable. A few months had turned into a year. I didn't warn her. I didn't say anything. I just canceled the automatic payment. When the next rent cycle hit and the money didn't go through, Claire texted me almost immediately. Hey, I think there's a bank glitch. The rent didn't process. I left it on red. A few hours later, another message, shorter, sharper. By that evening, she'd called me 4 times. I didn't answer. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Tracy, I know you're upset, but this is unnecessary. Can you please not make things harder for your sister? There was no mention of Zoe. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. That was the moment I understood something important. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. To them, I was just being emotional, overreacting, making things difficult. But I wasn't finished. 3 days after the rent payment failed, Claire sent me a long email. It was full of vague phrases about family going through rough patches and how hurt she was by the way I'd handled things. She ended it with a line that made my hands shake. I know this isn't Zoe's fault. As if my daughter had accidentally stumbled into an award she didn't deserve. As if Zoe was the problem. I didn't respond. The next day, Greg texted me. No greeting, no punctuation. You need to fix this. I blocked his number. That week, the family group chat lit up for the first time since Christmas Eve. My mother posted a picture of Claire's kids decorating a gingerbread house. A few relatives replied with heart emojis. Then my dad added, so proud of these angels. Real team spirit. I left the group chat without saying a word. Jenny called me later and admitted Claire wasn't speaking to her anymore, for telling me the truth. Then she told me something else. Apparently, my parents had planned a post-Christmas sleepover for all the grandkids that weekend. Claire told them she didn't want Zoe there. Said she didn't want to deal with the tension. My mother agreed. I didn't tell Zoe. I just told her plans had changed. She didn't ask why, but I could see the shift in her. She stopped talking about school as much. She grew quiet when I asked about her drawings. One night, I caught her flipping through that iPhone again, returning to the lock screen like she expected it to change. I took the phone from her hands and put it in a drawer. I couldn't stand the sight of it. Meanwhile, Claire started spiraling. Without the rent money, she and Greg were scrambling. Jenny heard through a friend in property management that their landlord had already issued a notice. Claire posted a vague Instagram story about people who stab you in the back but smile to your face. But what hurt the most was how quickly my parents turned into her mouthpieces. My dad called first, trying to reason with me. He said Claire was struggling, that they were just trying to keep the family together. I asked him if he remembered who had been keeping Claire afloat for the past year. He said, "We're all just trying to move past this." Then my mom tried. She told me Claire was embarrassed, but didn't know how to apologize. She said, "This family needs you, Tracy." I asked her one question. "Did you really agree to cut your only granddaughter out of Christmas?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "It wasn't like that." That was answer enough. From that moment on, everything started to crack, and I let it. From the outside, it probably looked like nothing was happening. No shouting matches, no public blow-ups, no dramatic confrontations. But inside the family, a quiet war had started, and silence was the sharpest weapon. A week after my conversation with my mother, I got a notification that made my stomach drop. The family vacation we'd planned for spring, the one Claire had insisted on, the one I'd booked and paid the deposit for, was coming up on its first payment deadline. The cabin was under my name, so I canceled it. No announcement, no warning. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "So you're really going to ruin it for everyone now? Grow up." It was Claire. I blocked her. After that, the invitations stopped coming. First was Lucy's birthday party. Zoe's name was never mentioned. Then a cousin's baby shower. Then a casual Sunday lunch that somehow everyone else knew about. The exclusion was quiet, surgical. No one ever said, "You're not invited." They just acted like Zoe and I had faded out of existence. Jenny was the only one who noticed, and the only one who said anything. "It's like watching a slow-motion car crash," she told me over the phone. "Do you think you'll forgive them?" I told her the truth. This isn't about forgiveness, it's about boundaries. Because I refused to teach my daughter that being good at something meant she deserved less love. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. One night, as I was cleaning out old paperwork, I came across a document I'd completely forgotten about. Last March, Claire had asked me to co-sign Lucy's private school application. She'd said it was just a formality, that my income looked better on paper. I'd signed without thinking. My name was still there. The next morning, I called the school and removed myself as co-signer. By Friday, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered out of habit. Claire didn't bother pretending. "What did you do?" she demanded. I hung up. That evening, Greg texted from a new number. "You think you're better than everyone now?" Blocked. That night, I took Zoe out for dinner. We ordered her favorite pasta and split a dessert. When we got home, we curled up on the couch and watched her favorite Christmas movie, even though it was weeks past the holiday. For the first time in a while, she relaxed. The next morning, I found an envelope on my doormat. No return address. Inside was an old family photo. Someone had taken a black marker and drawn a thick X over Zoe's face. On the back, 3 words were written in uneven handwriting. "Enjoy your win. Hope your daughter learns what losing feels like." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at it until my coffee went cold. That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Jenny called later that week with another update. Claire and Greg had pulled Lucy out of private school. Without financial help, they couldn't afford it. Lucy would be transferring to Zoe's public school. That same afternoon, I got a message from Lucy herself. She was 12, old enough to sense the tension, young enough to be trapped in it. "Why is my mom saying this is your fault?" I didn't reply. Because there was no answer that wouldn't hurt her. The family silence grew heavier. No calls, no texts, just passive-aggressive Facebook posts about loyalty and betrayal. Then my dad showed up at my door, unannounced. He looked older than I remembered, smaller, tired. He admitted something I'd already suspected. It hadn't just been Claire who wanted Zoe excluded from Christmas. My mother had suggested it. When I asked if Zoe had even been considered, if anyone had thought about how it would feel for a 9-year-old to be quietly erased, he couldn't answer. 3 days later, I got a credit alert. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name. The attempt had been flagged, but every detail was correct. My address, my social, my employment history. Only 2 people had access to that information. Claire and my mother. I froze my credit immediately and reported the fraud. I went through old paperwork. The proof was there. I considered calling the police. I didn't. Not yet. Because once I crossed that line, there would be no going back. And I needed to be sure. 2 days after the credit alert, I got an email that confirmed what I'd already been bracing for. It was from Claire's landlord. He wrote politely, almost apologetically, explaining that Claire had listed me as her emergency contact. She was now over 30 days behind on rent, and eviction proceedings had officially begun. He wanted to know if I'd be stepping in again. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "Do not contact me again. She no longer has my support. Remove my information immediately." No signature, no pleasantries. That was the moment it finally hit Claire. I wasn't coming back. That night, my mother called. I didn't answer. She texted instead. "We need to talk. I didn't know things had gotten this far. Please don't destroy your sister." That word again. Destroy. As if I'd been the one drawing X's over a child's face. As if I'd been the one committing fraud. A few hours later, Claire posted a long Facebook rant about family betrayal and false generosity. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Greg shared posts about people showing their true colors. I stayed silent. Zoe noticed. She asked why we didn't go to Grandma's house anymore. I told her some people weren't being kind, and that meant it wasn't a place we needed to be right now. She nodded and went back to drawing. Soon after, Claire and Greg moved in with my parents. The calls started again, pleading, accusing, desperate. "You're dividing the family. Don't let money ruin this." That one almost made me laugh. Then I got a call from Zoe's school. The counselor explained that Lucy had been telling other kids that Zoe bragged too much, that she was mean, that she thought she was better than everyone. There'd been an argument, one lunch period where Zoe sat alone. When I told Zoe, I did it calmly, carefully. She didn't cry. She just said, "I don't want to be like them." That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote everything down. Every payment, the phone, the credit attempt, the photo, the threats. Then I called my lawyer, not to press charges, not yet, just to untangle my name from anything Claire had ever touched, and to make sure Zoe was protected. After that, I blocked everyone. My parents, Claire, Greg, even the cousins who tried to play both sides. A few days later, Jenny sent me a screenshot. Claire had started a GoFundMe, "Help us rebuild a family torn apart." The story painted them as victims of betrayal. Generous relatives donated almost immediately. I didn't comment. I reported it, submitted proof. 2 days later, the fundraiser was gone. After that, the fallout came quietly. The messages slowed, then stopped. But the damage didn't end there. One afternoon, I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. It was from Lucy. She said she missed Zoe. She asked if she could still be her cousin. I cried when I read it, not because it changed my mind, but because it showed how far the damage had spread. I put the letter in a drawer with the phone, the photo, and the paperwork. I locked it all away, because some things don't need to be revisited to be remembered. The silence that followed wasn't immediate. At first, it came in waves. A missed call here. A half-hearted text there. My mother tried once more, sending a message that said only, "We raised you better than this." I didn't reply. Then the waves stopped. Claire and Greg settled into my parents' house, and with them went the last illusion that this was ever about misunderstanding. It was about entitlement, about what they thought I owed them, about how easily my parents had decided that my daughter's joy was an inconvenience. Zoe adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are observant in ways adults forget. She stopped asking when we'd see Grandma again. She stopped checking the calendar for family events. She filled the space they left behind with drawings, science kits, and quiet evenings on the couch where we cooked dinner together and watched whatever movie she was obsessed with that week. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked, "Mom, was I bad?" The question hit harder than anything Claire or my parents had done. "No," I said immediately. "You were brave and kind, and you did nothing wrong." She thought about that, then nodded. "I don't want to be small just so other people feel big," she said. I kissed her forehead and turned out the light with tears in my eyes. A few weeks later, my father showed up one last time. He didn't knock. He stood at the end of the driveway like he wasn't sure he was allowed any closer. He told me they were struggling, that Claire blamed everyone but herself, that my mother cried at night, that the house felt heavy. I listened. Then I said, "You chose this." He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he didn't. That was the last conversation we ever had. After that, I changed my number, closed old accounts, updated passwords. I stopped showing up to places where I wasn't welcome and stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided who I was. Eventually, they stopped trying. Months passed. The anger faded first, then the sadness. What stayed was clarity. One quiet Sunday, I took everything I'd saved, the phone, the defaced photo, the credit report, Lucy's letter, and sealed it in a box. I didn't destroy it. I didn't need to. I just put it away. Because closure doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from distance. And no, I never felt guilty. Not when family treated my child's light like a threat. Not when they weaponized silence and called it peace. Not when they mistook my generosity for obligation. Revenge isn't destruction. It's walking away while they're still holding the matches and choosing not to burn with them.